Hi everyone, I'm back. I have not done a video in ages, to the point where I even forgot how to do them. So this is about my fifth attempt, and hopefully I will be able to work it seamlessly this time. So anyway, I wanted to do a video on the justifications behind my predictions. So basically, my thoughts behind them. Why do I think these questions are going to come up in your exams this year? If you did come across these questions, how would you answer them? What would you do? So this is basically my rationale behind the questions that I think might come up in your religious studies exams this year. So let's get going. All right, so religious studies predictions exam 2025. First of all, for philosophy, I think these four questions are very possible, especially ontological and nature of God. I think these are very, very likely. Problem of evil is a question that comes up a lot, but never John Hick. And then body, mind, and soul is a hard topic. They do like asking questions on body, mind, and soul. It also wasn't on last year. So the questions that I think you could get asked for these, body, mind, and soul, the big area of this topic that has never been asked is to do with materialism or your critics. So Dawkins, the categorical imperative, Gilbert Ryle, or materialism generally, material versus dualism. So anything down those lines. But it also could be Aristotle. Aristotle versus Plato was asked a few years ago, but Aristotle on his own has never been asked either. I think Descartes and Plato Aristotle comparisons of all that's been asked in the second year, but obviously there has been a few in the first year as well to check out. Ontological has not been on for years. I think ontological is a massive area that you could get asked on, especially because there's so many obvious question areas. No questions being asked on Kant, no question is being asked on predicate. Gornillo was asked in the second year, but back in 2021. So I think that the ontological argument is a real likelihood. Most exams, if not all exams, they always ask at least one of the arguments to the existence of God. So that is your teleological, your cosmological, or your ontological. Now, cosmological came up last year for the first time, never been asked before. So that's kind of cosmological out, but they might ask it again this year. You can never be too prepared. But for me, ontological seems like it's going to be this year. Problem of evil. As I said, you get lots of questions on problem of evil. It comes up in the first year and the second year. But John Hick has never been asked. The whole Irenaean Theodicy, the whole second part of the spec, there has never ever been a question on John Hick. Have the examiners forgotten about him, or is this year the year? I will squeal if John Hick comes on. So get ready for John Hick. And finally, nature of God. Yes, my favourite. Please don't unfollow me if you hate nature of God. Nature of God is a very, very challenging topic. It is proper philosophy. So it's a brilliant, brilliant topic. And I think it could be down the lines of Swinburne or benevolence. But again, I think any areas of nature of God could come up. This is a real opportunity for you to shine though and get your A's and your A stars. So do check out the videos on YouTube to help with that topic if you do struggle. The alternative questions. Now, this is a bit of a cheat. I know you only get 4 questions and I'm now going to give you 8. But I don't think these are going to come on. But if they are to come on, I think that these would be the areas that they would ask you on. So Plato and Aristotle, Plato was asked last year, analogy of the cave. Finally, I never thought they would ask that question. They've never asked a compare Plato and Aristotle question. Now that is challenging and they like compare questions. So I think that's a possibility. Or they might ask, you might have a compare reason versus empiricism, or Aristotle might come up on his own. Now, obviously, I haven't put that on this PowerPoint, but Aristotle himself has not been asked for a number of years, and they haven't asked the 4 causes for a while, but also there's other questions from the first year, so something to do with how Aquinas sees reality. So I think, not Aquinas, sorry, Aristotle sees reality. So I think it's either going to be a compare or Aristotle on his own. Teleological might be an option. I don't think they'll ask teleological and ontological. They might, I doubt it, but evolution has never been asked, so that's just an area to not forget about. You might get the question that compares ontological, cosmological and teleological, which is an a posteriori argument is far more persuasive than an a priori argument. So a posteriori is obviously teleological and cosmological, a priori is ontological. Now, it's in every part of the spec, it's in all sections for each of those topics, it's mentioned in the discussion section, they could ask you it, it's a challenging question, you could write a lot, but that's not always a good thing because you have to keep it very controlled and very evaluative. So just maybe prepare that one beforehand just in case. Have a practice of that one. Religious experience, very much doubt it. It's been asked in the last 2 exams. I have never known them ask the same topic 3 years in a row. Again, they might. And if they were to ask it, they have not asked a question on psychological or physiological. I don't think it's your year this year for that one. I think that's going to be next year. And finally, religious language, again, I don't think so. It was on last year as far as analogy. But if it is asked, all 20th century has been asked, verification, falsification, language games. The only area that's never been asked is the apophatic way. Now that might catch you out. Examiners like to catch you out. Apophatic way means via negativa. So again, just be prepared more with the words, because if it said via negativa, you'd be like, yeah, I've got this, I know what to write about. Apophatic way, you might go, huh? What's that? So just be warned that obviously they are the same thing, and that's the only area they've never asked a question on before. Right, moving swiftly on. I said it was going to be quick. Ethics. Ethics is really hard to predict. Why? Well, all predictions are hard to predict. I'm not Mystic Meg and I don't have a crystal ball. But because there's so much overlap in ethics, in that obviously you have natural law and situation ethics on their own, but then you have to be able to link these to euthanasia. You can have euthanasia on its own. Basically, you're not going to get out of revising pretty much everything for ethics. You need to revise it all. But these are the areas that I would prepare yourself for more than maybe the other areas. So the first is euthanasia and or situation ethics. You could get a specific question on situation ethics, such as the 6 propositions or the 4 working principles, which was asked in the first year, so last year's first year exam. So that's the AS year. They were asked for the 4 working principles. The examiners really like to ask questions that were in the first year's exam, in the second year's exam the following year. Does that make sense? So they've done that with Descartes. One year they asked Descartes in the first year, and then the following year they asked a very similar question in the second year. So be prepared that they might ask this, even though it was asked in the first year, they might ask you it in the second year this time round. Fletcher's understanding of agape means nothing more than wanting the best for the person involved in a given situation. You can talk about agape in general, or you can link that to euthanasia. Do not link it to business. You could link it to sex if you wanted to. You could get a specific question on euthanasia. The only area that's not being asked is about medical intervention versus non-medical intervention. I don't think they'll ask you that one. I think they would ask you a sanctity of life, quality of life question instead, but they have asked these previously. You might also get an application. So application means they specifically identify that they want you to compare situation ethics with euthanasia. So sometimes they leave it open for your interpretation. Sometimes they actually specify they want you to compare and apply it to both. Utilitarianism, this is the year. This is the year for utilitarianism. It has never been asked in the second year. So any question on utility, hedonic calculus, act versus rule, sorry, excuse me. You might also get a question asked on strengths of Bentham outweighs the weaknesses. Is it possible to reach a moral decision based on pleasure? So you could basically get any question, but it's never business and utilitarianism has come up. Utilitarianism on its own has not. That's the distinguishing factor. So if you think utilitarianism has been on, no, it's been on in relationship to business. It's never been on its own. So that's one you need to be prepared for. Sex ethics is going to be on this year. Okay, I very, very much think that sex ethics is going to be there. I'll be extremely surprised if it's not. I think the two main areas that you are going to or could get asked on is Kant and sex ethics has never been asked. He is the only one out of the four, utilitarianism, natural law, situation ethics and Kant, he is the only one to have not had a question. The other three have come up in previous years. So I think it's either going to be a Kant and sex, or a massive area of the spec that's never been asked is specifically on homosexuality, extramarital or premarital sex, in which you can apply any theory you want to them. But it's never been asked. So it's never been to what extent can issues surrounding sex ethics, sorry, that's my Kant question. No theory is useful when dealing with issues surrounding homosexuality. That's when you would decide, right, I'm going to look at two theories, one that is useful, one is not useful, and apply them to homosexuality. Top two notes for this one. Make sure you know some wider facts and information about homosexuality, not just what you see on Instagram or your TikTok reels or whatever it is. Google the BBC News, for example. See what's going on in the last 2 years to do with homosexuality. See what the laws are. See what countries it is and it's not illegal. See what cases there's been to do with homosexuality. See what, you know, now poor Pope Francis has moved on to greener pastures. You know, he did an awful lot for the homosexual community. Is there rumblings that these things might change now? So keep your finger on the pulse to do with the news. What's going on with homosexuality? Give some specific examples. The second thing to know is that just because you don't like how can I explain this? The result of what a theory tells you. So, for example, natural law, second primary precept is reproduction, therefore it would say homosexuality is wrong. Just because you don't like the answer doesn't mean the theory isn't useful. So natural law is useful still because it's given you a clear answer. Yes, you don't like the answer because you're thinking homosexuality, of course it's absolutely acceptable, and natural law is saying it's not because they can't reproduce, but it still means the theory itself is useful because you can still apply it. So always try and think of it like that. You're not trying to say whether you like the theory or not, you're saying whether you can apply it or not. Conscience might come up, and I think it'll either be an umbrella question where you can bring in anything, or to do with guilt. Freud has been asked, Aquinas has been asked, but guilt is a part of the spec. It's a really random part of the spec, to be honest with you. There's not a lot to say for that one, so that would take a bit of wider reading and research, a bit of preparation. So be prepared for that. If it's an umbrella one, that means you can bring in anything and all sorts. Other possibilities. Corporate social responsibility has not been asked in the second year, but it has been asked in the first year, last year. So again, they might repeat it this year. Globalisation has not been asked. Also, critically assess the view that people just know within themselves what is good, bad, right and wrong through common sense, so intuition. I don't think metaethics is going to come up this year. Ethical naturalism came up last year. But if it does, maybe down a common sense route and intuition route. Whew, final round. Right. Doctrines of Christian thought. Augustine, I think, might appear this year. I love the Augustine topic. I love teaching the Augustine topic. Writing exam papers on it is tough, though. At least with Doctrines of Christian thought, you can really... It's not as regimented as philosophy and ethics. What I mean by that is there's a very much a prescribed structure to do with philosophy and ethics, whereas Doctrines of Christian thought, you can really go down lots of avenues of discussion. What about this? How about this? And you can bring in lots of different areas. So it does allow a lot more freedom, I think, in your answers, and you get a lot more marks awarded for creativity in this area. So St. Augustine is right that sin means that humans can never be morally good, or Augustine's view of human nature is pessimistic. What does pessimistic mean? Who is making the judgment whether it's pessimistic? How does it apply to Augustine? Does it not apply? That's what I would explore in that question. Person of Jesus. I think this is going to come up. Person of Jesus, I love Person of Jesus topic. I know some people don't really like it. I think it's a brilliant topic. I think Jesus as the rebel and the liberation area and the teacher. I think it's a brilliant topic. The one area that has never been asked is the relationship between Jesus and God. So is it truly unique? Is Jesus a hybrid? Is he half God, half man? Please do not call him a hybrid in your exam. But basically, did Jesus know about his relationship to God? How much knowledge did Jesus have? Was he omniscient, etc., etc.? Did he really feel pain on the cross? Tip, make sure you know Mark 6 and John 9. They could be part of a question. Moral action, Bonhoeffer's not been on for a while. We love Bonhoeffer. The examiners went through a time when they asked loads of Bonhoeffer questions. The cost of discipleship is too unrealistic. Again, look to the past questions video of all the past questions that have been asked, because sometimes the first year questions, the ones asked for the lower six, the first year exam for the AS year, they often get repeated very similar in the second year. So do check out that PowerPoint just to see patterns. Secularization is a possibility. It could be a very general question, like to what extent is secularization an opportunity for Christianity to develop new ways of thinking and acting? So that would be, just picking out different parts within society. Does it allow Christianity to evolve, develop, change? Again, I highly, highly recommend follow the news, see what's happening in the Catholic Church, see what the rumblings are. Pope Francis did fantastic things for the Catholic Church, but he was very liberal. He was very, he was quite up with the times. Are they going to go now again back to a very traditional John Paul II sort of Pope, and therefore what changes will happen? See what's happening in the news. Keep your eyes on that. Or a question on Dawkins. Society would be happier without Christianity as it is infantile, repressive and causes conflicts. Gender theology. I think that gender and theology could come up, and I think it would be quite an open question. They have asked a Daly question, they have asked a Ruther question. So it could be something like Christianity can be changed and should not be abandoned. That's actually a double whammy. Changed is Ruther, abandoned is Daly. Christianity is essentially sexist is more Daly. If you get a question that compares Daly and Ruther, this is probably one of the hardest questions you would get asked. Why? Because students could talk for days, weeks, months about Daly and Ruther. You could go down the biggest tangents and rants about these women because they're passionate, they're so interesting. I mean, Daly, my goodness me, I wish Daly had lived in the time of Twitter. She'd have been a menace online. But you have to keep it controlled. You have 40 minutes. What that means is if you do get a question on both Daly and Ruther, like changed or abandoned, you need to pick your themes very carefully. What that means is you need to pick maybe 2 to 3 themes per woman, per philosopher, and then use them against each other. So, for example, if you do Daly's three-headed monster, the different parts of her argument, you're probably not going to be able to do the rest of it. You're probably not going to do the rest of her argument. So pick which parts of the arguments you want to do, but you're not going to be able to do all of Daly and all of Ruther, because, I mean, Daly alone has her own PowerPoint. It took me that long to go through it. Other possibilities, death and afterlife, doubt it, came up last year as heaven. But it could be something on hell or election, or pluralism and theology. Christ is the truth, so there can be any. Christ is the truth, so there should be no other means of salvation, or there cannot be any other means of salvation. Sorry, that's a spelling mistake I've just found. I know I've picked 5 there. You only get 4 questions. They're always going to pick something from the second year. That's where my inklings are falling. Do not forget, though, these are just my judgments. All I have done is I've gone through all past papers, put all the questions together from both the first year and the second year, and looked at the specification and worked out the most obvious gaps. What should the teachers have taught you, such as John Hick in Problem of Evil, and what has never been asked? That's how I do predictions. So they can be completely wrong. You have to learn all of the spec, but hopefully my predictions remind you of those little areas you might forget about, like evolution, and it might crop up in your exam. Finally, as well, just in case you are a bit confused, when I talk about the first year or the AS year, what that means is that some students only do half a qualification. Some students do their exam at the end of the first year. They don't do the full 2-year course. Most students do the 2-year course. You guys will probably be doing the 2-year course, where it'll be all 32 units over the 3 exams. Some students, however, just do half the A level, and that's known as first year or the AS year. So the exam board still send a set of paper just for them, but quite often the paper they set for the first year students, they then repeat a question or themes in the year after's second year paper. That's why going back over my PowerPoint with past questions and looking at what was asked last year, what kind of questions they ask in the first year, because you'll see a lot of links across and over. Otherwise, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this useful. Please drop me any comments or questions. And don't forget, I am doing live streams the evening before each of your exams at 6. Bye for now, everyone.